earlier today. Before we get to that, let's get to Ron Christie, Morgan Ortegas, and Gina Loudon. Gina, as someone who came to fame thanks to the Tea Party and making it a big deal and reminding these guys their word matters, their commitment to stimulating the economy through tax cuts, watching budgets, et cetera, are you disappointed? Are you getting different vibes from Donald Trump?
Not at all. In fact, I hope that he takes away all the loopholes that those who are the super wealthy with teams and teams of tax attorneys can help them hide from. And I think that's exactly what he's talking about. You think that's where he's going, just to take away, like, carried interest, that sort of thing? Do you think that's all he's going to do? I think that's exactly what he's going to do. And in fact, in his statement, he said something about his major concern is the middle class who has been left out of this equation over and over again. You simplify the tax code and you make things easier for everybody, but you also take away the loopholes of the super rich. Well, I don't know. I'm confused. And Morgan, maybe you can help me with this, because I do remember as he was campaigning, and we had a lot of other people with whom he was campaigning against in the Republican Party, that was the centerpiece to his economic mantra. That is cutting taxes across the board for everyone, the highest rate of 25%. Even critics said that it was going to cost the government the most because the taxes were being cut the most, and he dialed it back for the rich. Now, that might be just adjusting, but between that and the minimum wage thing and some of the other stuff he's been saying, I don't know where he stands on some key issues.
Well, not only would it be a departure from what he said in campaign, I think it would be a departure from the Republican Party since the Reagan Revolution on where we stand on taxes, tax increases, and tax hikes. So he is the presumptive Republican nominee, which he won fair and square. And so therefore, he does have control going into this election at the party, at the convention especially, on what the agenda will be. And so this is why I think it's understandable that people like Paul Ryan, who are very concerned with tax reform, with entitlement reform, are going to be concerned about some of the positions. I did a very formal and accurate Facebook poll this morning among my socially conservative and evangelical friends, and they are less worried about the tax issue and much more worried about where he stands on his commitment to social conservative issues, like being pro-life, like gay marriage, the sort of things that matter to evangelicals. And you probably saw he got into it with one of the leaders of the Southern Baptist Convention over Twitter this morning. So it's been an interesting day for him with the base.
Well, no, obviously evangelicals then are scratching their head. Wait a minute, what are your views on these subjects? Now, look, I should posit here that all candidates, especially once they clinch the nomination, if you're a Democrat, you move from the left to the center. If you're a Republican, you move from the right to the center, or you start pivoting a little bit to get ready for the general election. That I understand. But some of these remarks strike me, Ron, as a reason why some of these establishment Republicans, for lack of a better term, are raising their eyebrows here. Now, some of them, to me, do sound like sore losers, and they're not getting on board. I understand that frustration. But having said all of that, I can understand their surprise here.
Well, hey, Neil, I don't know if I would call myself an establishment Republican, but I have to tell you.
Oh, you are. Are you kidding?
Oh, all right. Maybe I am.
I cut you and your blood comes out blue. What are you talking about? All right. Well, go ahead.
My wife will love that one. Yeah. I'll humor you. Look, all throughout this campaign, we've been saying, what does Donald Trump really stand for? What are his honest-to-goodness convictions of where he looks at foreign policy, where he looks at the tax code, where he looks at a wide variety of issues? And just a second after he got this nomination presumptively locked up, what does he do? He comes out and says, maybe we'll raise the minimum wage. Maybe we'll raise taxes on the rich. I have always wondered, and Neil, you know this, and I've said this many times in your show, what does this guy stand for? Now Republicans are looking and saying 60% of the Republicans who cast their ballot did not vote for Donald Trump, and now this guy's our nominee? We could be in for a rough ride for the next several months. Well, but he did win fair and square, and he did win by a big margin fair and square. Leaving that aside, now, Gina, what a lot of them are saying, though, is this isn't the guy we thought we elected, right? And now you're disputing that and dismissing that, which is fine. But some of these changes are more than mere pivots, right?
You know, no, I really don't see. I don't know if people can't read or what the problem is, but if you go to his website, his policy is right there. It's spelled out very clearly.
I can read, young lady.
It's spelled out very clearly, and so I don't see where the confusion is. He understands, like you and all of us sitting here on this panel understand, Neil, that when you have a free market economy that is allowed to be free market, some really great things are going to happen. It's going to increase the wages that people
Gina, you
make.
might be right. Morgan, what worries me, though, is then I don't know exactly what he means. Well, the tax plan was big, and I know it's going to alter, but why talk about making concessions or dealing with the other side when if you were elected, that is Donald Trump, I assume you would be taking with you the same Republican House and Senate, you don't have to be in a position to give something to the other side, right?
That's an interesting point. I mean, I think that he's looking.
Many of them.
I think he's looking at this from a business perspective and not a political perspective. So I think he's thinking of how he normally negotiates deals and says, "Listen, this is how we do things." You know, so we probably, you know, if it gets into President Trump next year and he starts negotiating, maybe he wants to give himself as much flexibility as possible whenever it comes to issues like taxes and entitlement reform, so he can make the deal that he thinks is in the best interest of the country. Now, will that deal look like the deal that conservatives want it to look like? Probably not. But that's also how Washington works. We've had 8 years of gridlock in Washington with no one getting along. So we'll see. Listen, I've underestimated Mr. Trump throughout the primary, so I no longer do so anymore. I hope that he ends up on the conservative side of these issues because that's the issue I believe in, and that's how I'll be voting in November. But we'll see.
So, Ron, these latest switches or at least adjustments, pivots, whatever you want to call them, don't alarm you or do and make you worry about future such pivots?
They do, because it makes me wonder, what does he stand for? What does he think about dealing with Russia? He's praised Vladimir Putin and said that Putin was a good guy. Well, the Russians are one of our biggest adversaries these days, last time I checked. How is he going to find a way, Neil, to find unity with the Republican Party, to find a way to coalesce behind him? I don't see it at this point.
All right, buddy, thank you very much. Yeah, real quick, yeah.
But Neil, the unknown of Trump is so infinitely much better than the absolutely known and predictable of a Hillary Clinton
you obviously didn't see
administration.
any of the Twilight Zone episodes. You're much younger than me. But the unknown ended up being worse, young lady. You're going to have to revisit your Rod Serling box set. I could share that with you if you want. Seriously, guys, I want to thank you all very, very much. I do want to get to a news breaking development, and Stuart